So I thought I had the perfect life. A loving wife, two adorable kids, and a home we built with dreams and laughter. Sarah, my wife, had always been my partner in everything. Or so I thought. I worked long hours to provide for my family, and she managed the house, the kids, and everything else. For 10 years, I believed we were a team, inseparable. But everything changed the day I stumbled upon something I wasn't supposed to see. It started with a simple notification on her phone. It was a quiet evening. The kids were in their room watching cartoons, and Sarah was in the kitchen preparing dinner. Her phone, usually glued to her hand, buzzed on the countertop. I wasn't trying to snoop, but the name caught my eye. Jake, I didn't recognize it. The message read, "I can't wait for this weekend." Finally, just us. My heart sank. My mind raced as I tried to make sense of it. Who was Jake? What weekend? And why did this message sound so intimate? I didn't say anything that night. I wanted to believe it was nothing, maybe a misunderstanding. But the uneasiness didn't go away. I started paying attention, noticing things I had ignored before. Sarah was dressing differently, spending more time on her hair and makeup. She seemed glued to her phone, texting late at night and smiling at messages I couldn't see. She started leaving the house more often, with vague excuses like meeting a friend or running errands. The breaking point came when she mentioned a work conference in another city. She said she'd be gone for 3 days, leaving Friday morning and returning Sunday night. Her tone was casual, but something about it felt rehearsed. I tried to act normal, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. That night, when she went to bed, I checked our shared bank account. That's when I found it, a hotel reservation under her name, booked for the same weekend as the so-called conference. My chest tightened as I stared at the screen. The hotel wasn't even in the city she claimed to be visiting. My mind screamed denial, but the evidence was right there. I couldn't ignore it anymore. She was lying to me, and I had to find out why. I decided not to confront her right away. If she was lying about this, there was more she wasn't telling me. I needed to know the whole truth before making any decisions. I started digging deeper, looking at her phone whenever I got the chance, checking her emails, and even keeping track of her movements. The more I looked, the more I found. Strange charges on her credit card, unexplained absences, and then the name Jake appearing again and again in messages. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just an affair. There was something bigger going on. And if I didn't act fast, I might lose everything. My kids, my home, and the life I'd worked so hard to build. I wasn't just hurt anymore. I was angry. I was ready to fight back. For 10 years, my life revolved around my family. I wasn't a perfect husband, but I worked hard to give them everything they needed. Sarah and I had built a life together from scratch. I remember the early days of our marriage, full of laughter and dreams about the future. We were partners, or at least I thought we were. I took pride in being a provider, working long hours at a job that drained me, just to make sure Sarah and the kids had everything they could ever want. Sarah had always been good at running the household. She kept things in order, made sure the kids were cared for, and still found time to make our home feel warm and welcoming. Or at least, that's how it used to be. Slowly, things started to change. At first it was small, little things that didn't seem important on their own. She stopped laughing as much. Her smile felt forced, like she was just going through the motions. The small conversations we used to have about our day faded into silence. I chalked it up to life getting busy, thinking maybe I wasn't pulling my weight emotionally. But then came the late nights. She'd say she had work to finish, but I'd catch glimpses of her sitting in the living room, scrolling through her phone. When I asked her about it, she'd brush it off as just talking to friends, or looking at recipes. I wanted to believe her. Why wouldn't I? She was my wife. But the distance between us grew, and every excuse felt thinner than the last. One night I walked into the room while she was texting. She quickly turned her phone over and gave me a nervous laugh. "It's just a friend," she said. Her tone was casual, but her hands trembled. That was the first time I felt real doubt, but I ignored it. Maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe it really was just a friend. But once doubt creeps in, it doesn't go away. It wasn't just the phone. She started dressing differently, paying more attention to her appearance. She bought new clothes, pieces she wouldn't usually wear, tighter dresses, expensive shoes. I told her she looked beautiful, but she barely acknowledged the compliment. Then there were the sudden plans. She'd leave the house without much of an explanation, saying she had errands to run or was meeting an old friend. I wanted to trust her. I told myself I was imagining things, that everything was fine. The kids were my anchor during those weeks. They were too young to notice the tension building between us. I made sure to spend time with them, to keep things normal for their sake. But in the back of my mind, the questions kept piling up. I'd lie awake at night, staring at the ceiling, wondering what I was missing. Every time she left the house, I felt a growing knot in my chest. When she told me about the work conference, I almost believed her. Almost. But there was something about the way she said it. Too casual, too rehearsed. She avoided eye contact and her tone felt hollow. My stomach churned as she went on about how important the conference was and how she'd be back in a couple of days. I smiled, nodded, and told her I'd take care of things at home, but inside, I was unraveling. This wasn't just my wife going through a phase. It wasn't just a rough patch in our marriage. Something was happening, something bigger than I could understand. And if I didn't figure it out soon, I was going to lose everything. My family, my home, the life I had worked so hard to build. The day she left for the conference, I stood at the window and watched her drive away. The knot in my stomach tightened. I knew I had a choice. Ignore the signs and hope I was wrong, or dig deeper and find the truth. But the truth has a way of finding you, whether you're ready for it or not. And I wasn't ready for what I was about to discover. That night after Sarah left, I couldn't shake the uneasiness that had been building for weeks. Every instinct told me something wasn't right. The kids were asleep, and the house felt unnaturally quiet. I sat on the couch, staring at the wall, trying to convince myself that I was imagining things. But the message from Jake flashed in my mind like a warning I couldn't ignore. My heart was heavy, but my resolve was stronger. I had to know the truth. I started with her laptop. Sarah wasn't great with technology, and we shared the same passwords for most things. I opened her email, scrolling through messages that looked innocent enough, until I found one that made my stomach drop. It was from Jake, dated 2 weeks ago, and the subject line read, "Our weekend plans." My hands shook as I clicked on it. Inside were details about their hotel reservation, dinner plans, and something that made my blood boil. I've been dreaming about us finally being free. Free from what? From me? From our family? The rage inside me threatened to take over, but I held it back. I needed to think clearly. Confronting her now would only give her a chance to deny everything or twist the story. I had to play this smart. I logged into our shared calendar. There, under the conference dates, was a hidden event labeled Special Weekend. No details, just the title. I stared at it, my mind racing. Why would she hide this from me? My chest tightened with every passing second. I knew I couldn't stop now. I needed more proof. The next morning, I called into work and told them I'd be working from home for a couple of days. I didn't want to leave the house, not when everything felt like it was unraveling. I dropped the kids off at school, pretending everything was normal, and returned home to dig deeper. I decided to check her social media. Sarah wasn't overly active online, but she had a private account she used to share personal updates with a close circle of friends. It didn't take long to find what I was looking for. A picture of her and Jake, taken at what looked like a park. The caption read, "Moments like these make it all worth it." My hands clenched into fists. She had posted this weeks ago, and I hadn't even noticed. Then there was the kicker, a comment from one of her friends. "So happy for you too? You deserve this." The pieces were falling into place, and they painted a picture I didn't want to see. Sarah wasn't just cheating on me. She had built an entire life with this man behind my back. The final straw came when I found an email from a lawyer. The subject line was, "Initial Custody Agreement Draft." My heart pounded as I opened it. Inside were details about a proposed custody arrangement that would give Sarah full custody of the kids and leave me with minimal visitation rights. She had already started planning to take them away from me. I couldn't breathe. This wasn't just betrayal. This was a full-blown attack on everything I held dear. My kids, my home, my life. She was trying to take it all. Anger coursed through me like fire, but beneath it was something stronger. Determination. If she thought she could destroy my life and walk away unscathed, she was dead wrong. I spent the rest of the day planning. I contacted a private investigator, someone who could gather the evidence I needed to expose her lies. I wasn't going to let her take my kids or my home. She thought she was in control, but I was about to turn the tables. This wasn't just about revenge, it was about survival. As I stared at the damning messages and photos, one thought kept echoing in my mind. She made this choice. Now she would face the consequences. The private investigator I hired wasted no time. He was a professional, someone who had handled countless cases like mine, and he understood the urgency of my situation. Within hours, he started digging into Sarah's activities, her connections, and her whereabouts. I provided him with everything I had. The messages, the emails, the hotel reservation, and he assured me that it wouldn't take long to get the evidence I needed. I felt a strange mix of relief and anxiety. I wanted the truth, but I wasn't sure I was ready for what he might find. The next evening, the investigator called me. "I have something," he said. My heart raced as he explained that he had followed Sarah to a restaurant downtown. She wasn't alone. Jake was there, sitting across from her, holding her hand. They looked like a couple, laughing, smiling, completely at ease. The investigator had taken pictures, clear enough to leave no room for doubt. He promised to send them to me along with a full report. When I saw the photos, something inside me broke. There she was, the woman I had loved for over a decade, sitting with another man like I didn't exist. The betrayal was unbearable. But I knew I couldn't let my emotions cloud my judgment. This wasn't just about me anymore. I had to protect my kids. The next step was critical. The investigator suggested we track their activities over the weekend. He knew about the hotel reservation, and he planned to gather more evidence during their stay. I agreed, though every part of me wanted to confront Sarah right then and there. But I knew that if I acted impulsively, she could twist the narrative and make me look like the villain. I needed to stay calm and focused. When the weekend arrived, Sarah left early Friday morning. She kissed the kids goodbye and gave me a quick peck on the cheek, her smile as fake as ever. "I'll call you later," she said before walking out the door. I watched her drive away, my jaw clenched, knowing exactly where she was going. The investigator kept me updated throughout the day. Sarah and Jake checked into the hotel under fake names, but it didn't matter. The investigator had everything on camera. Sarah walking into the lobby, Jake carrying their bags, the two of them holding hands as they entered their room. My blood boiled with every update, but I forced myself to stay composed. By Saturday evening, I had more than enough evidence to confront her. Photos, videos, messages, everything was there. But this wasn't just about exposing the affair. It was about stopping her plan to take my kids and my home. I needed to act carefully, strategically. I reached out to my lawyer and explained the situation. He reviewed the evidence and assured me that we had a strong case. "She won't get away with this," he said confidently. His words gave me a sense of hope, a reminder that I wasn't powerless. That night I made my decision. I wasn't going to wait for Sarah to come home and feed me more lies. I was going to confront her at the hotel face to face. But I wasn't going alone. I called a trusted friend, someone who had been by my side through thick and thin, and explained everything. He agreed to come with me, not just for support, but to ensure things didn't get out of hand. As we drove to the hotel, my mind raced with possibilities. What would she say when she saw me? Would she try to deny it, or would she finally admit the truth? I didn't know, but one thing was certain. This was the moment everything would change. When we arrived at the hotel, I felt a surge of adrenaline. My friend stayed in the car while I made my way to the lobby. The investigator had already told me their room number, and I walked straight to the elevator. ignoring the curious looks from the staff. My hands trembled as I pressed the button for their floor. Standing outside their door, I took a deep breath. This was it. There was no turning back now. I raised my hand and knocked firmly. The seconds that followed felt like an eternity. Finally, the door opened, and there she was. Sarah's face went pale as she saw me standing there. "Hi, Sarah," I said, my voice steady but cold. "We need to talk." Sarah stood frozen, her hand still on the door handle, her face drained of all color. For a moment she didn't say anything, but her eyes darted behind her, likely toward Jake, who I could see sitting on the edge of the bed, his face twisted in confusion and alarm. "Jack, what are you doing here?" she stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. "I think you already know," I said, stepping into the room before she could close the door. She didn't stop me, probably too shocked to react. Jake stood up, trying to compose himself. "Who's this?" he asked, his voice edged with nervousness. "I'm her husband," I replied, turning to him. "And you must be Jake." His face turned red, and he shifted uncomfortably, looking at Sarah for help, but she was too busy trying to come up with an explanation. "This isn't what it looks like," Sarah began, but I cut her off. "Don't insult my intelligence, Sarah. I know everything. The messages, the emails, the hotel reservations. Do you really think I'd come here without proof?" Her mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water, but no words came out. Jake tried to step in, his voice shaking. "Look, man, I didn't know she was married. Don't," I interrupted, my voice sharp. "Don't even try to play the innocent card. I've seen enough to know you're both guilty." The room fell silent for a moment, the weight of the confrontation hanging heavy in the air. Sarah finally found her voice, but it was laced with desperation. "Jack, please, let's talk about this. Not here. Not like this." "Not like this?" I repeated, incredulous. "You mean not here in the hotel room where you're cheating on me? Where you've been planning to take my kids and my home while you play house with this guy?" Her eyes widened, and Jake looked at her in confusion. "What's he talking about?" he asked, his tone accusing. Sarah didn't answer, her silence telling him everything he needed to know. "I saw the email, Sarah," I continued, my voice calm but firm. "The custody arrangement you were drafting with your lawyer. Did you think I wouldn't find out? Did you think you could just walk away with everything I've worked for?" Jake took a step back, his hands raised as if to distance himself from the situation. "Whoa, hold on. Custody arrangement? Sarah, what the hell is he talking about?" "It's not what you think," she said quickly, her voice trembling. "I was just exploring options. I wasn't going to—" "Save it," I snapped. "You've already done enough damage. I'm not here to argue with you. I'm here to make sure you face the consequences of your actions." I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. "You see, Sarah, I've been recording everything. The texts, the photos, the reservations. And now this lovely little reunion with Jake here. I've got all the proof I need to ensure you don't get away with this." Her face crumpled, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Jack, please, don't do this. Think about the kids." "I am thinking about the kids," I said, my voice breaking slightly. "That's why I'm not letting you take them. They deserve better than a mother who lies and betrays her family." Jake, clearly uncomfortable, began edging toward the door. "Look, I don't want any part of this," he said. "I didn't sign up for custody battles or any of this drama." "Smart choice," I replied coldly, stepping aside to let him leave. He hesitated for a moment, looking at Sarah, but when she didn't say anything, he slipped past me and out the door without another word. Sarah sank onto the bed, her face buried in her hands. "What are you going to do?" she asked, her voice muffled by her sobs. "I've already spoken to my lawyer," I said. "We'll be filing for divorce first thing Monday morning. And don't think for a second you're getting custody of the kids or the house. I have more than enough evidence to prove what kind of person you really are." She looked up at me, her eyes pleading. "Jack, I made a mistake. Please don't do this. We can fix this. We can go to counseling. Start over." I shook my head, the pain in my chest almost unbearable. "You made your choice, Sarah, and now you have to live with it." Without another word, I turned and walked out of the room, leaving her alone with the mess she had created. As I stepped into the elevator, I felt a strange mix of emotions: anger, sadness, and relief. This wasn't the end I had envisioned for my marriage, but it was the beginning of a new chapter, one where I could finally take control of my life again. The next few days were a whirlwind. As much as I wanted to fall apart, I couldn't afford to. My kids needed me, and I needed to make sure I stayed ahead of Sarah's schemes. My lawyer and I worked tirelessly to finalize the paperwork for the divorce and custody battle. Every piece of evidence I had collected, messages, photos, emails, was laid out meticulously. My lawyer reassured me that the case was in my favor. But Sarah wasn't going down without a fight. She showed up at the house unannounced one evening, her face streaked with tears, begging for forgiveness. "Jack, I know I messed up, I know I hurt you," she said, her voice trembling. "But we can fix this, for the kids." Her words felt hollow, like echoes of promises she'd already broken. I looked her in the eyes, searching for any sign of the woman I had loved, the woman I thought I knew. But all I saw was someone who had made her choices and now wanted to escape the consequences. "This isn't just about me, Sarah," I said. "It's about the kids, about the life you tried to destroy." "I wasn't trying to destroy anything," she insisted. "I was confused. Jake, he was just a distraction. I was unhappy, but I never stopped loving you." Her words hit me like a brick wall. Unhappy. Was that supposed to justify everything she had done? "Unhappy?" I repeated, my voice rising despite myself. "You were unhappy. So you lied to me, cheated on me, and tried to take my kids away. That's not love, Sarah. That's selfishness.